The adversary is closer to home. We cannot track $2.3 trillion in transactions.
And if you read the piece on the pension funds, at the end I come down and I say, there's $21 trillion missing from DOD and HUD.
On September the 12th, 2001, what would you have done if you'd been president?
I would have done a legitimate investigation to find out what exactly happened.
The hidden history of the human race.
We looked at every archaeological discovery that's ever been made, and what we found is that human beings, like ourselves, have been around millions of years. If even one of the hundreds of cases that we document in the hidden history of the human race were accepted, that would mean that everything we've been told about human origins and antiquity for the past 150 years is simply not true.
The climate change issue is an absolutely catastrophic, nightmarish mess, and the idea that that will unite us is that's not going to unite us.
The problem is we have a privately owned central bank system disguised as a government-owned system. It's a privately owned central bank.
Interest rates are so low because the Fed is controlled by the politicians. And we have a Fed that's doing political things.
Professor Chomsky, why did Daniel Ellsberg do what he did?
Dan Ellsberg released to the American people information how a series of presidents enmeshed them in a vicious and costly war of aggression.
Well, I, sitting at my desk, certainly had the authorities to wiretap anyone from you or your accountant to a federal judge to even the president if I had a personal email, because they're such powerful adversaries that no one can meaningfully oppose them. You don't have to have done anything wrong. You simply have to eventually fall under suspicion from somebody, even by a wrong call. If they want to get you, they'll get you in time, and it'll be turnkey tyranny.
God damn it.
I think that's the CIA asking what the code is for a TED membership.
For we meet in an hour of change and challenge. Man in his quest for knowledge and progress is determined and cannot be deterred. The exploration of space will go ahead, and it is one of the great adventures of all time. Those who came before us made certain that this country rode the first waves of the Industrial Revolution, the first waves of modern invention.
How did he escape? Divine providence. A nice, easy explanation for gullible people.
Tell no one, and it reportedly shows how abusive priests ruined the lives of victims and faced no consequences.
Now this global crisis has reached the top of the Vatican.
And this generation does not intend to founder in the backwash of the coming age of space. For the eyes of the world now look into space, to the moon and to the planets beyond. And we have vowed that we shall not see it governed by a hostile flag of conquest, but by a banner of freedom and peace. We have vowed that we shall not see space filled with weapons of mass destruction, but with instruments of knowledge and understanding. We set sail on this new sea because there is new knowledge to be gained and new rights to be won, and they must be won and used for the progress of all people. For space science has no conscience of its own. Whether it will become a force for good or ill depends on man. Can we help decide whether this new ocean will be a sea of peace or a new terrifying theater of war? But I do say that space can be explored and mastered without feeding the fires of war, without repeating the mistakes that man has made in extending his writ around this globe of ours.
We now stand 10 years past the midpoint of a century that has witnessed 4 major wars among great nations. We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
Total war makes no sense where a single nuclear weapon contains almost 10 times the explosive force delivered by all the Allied air forces in the Second World War. Today, the expenditure of billions of dollars every year on weapons acquired for the purpose of making sure we never need them is not the only, much less the most efficient, means of assuring peace.
The thing that we should have learned before we learned 1, 2, 3 and ABC, but somehow was overlooked. Any experience that we have through our senses, whether of sound or of light or of touch, is a vibration. And that's simply the way things are.
Transhumanism is the idea that man is merging with technology. Will robots inherit the earth? Yes, they will, but they will be our children.
Just as you don't encounter a coin that has the heads but no tails. And although the heads and the tails, the fronts and the backs, the positives and the negatives are different, they're at the same time one. And one has to get used fundamentally to the notion that different things can be inseparable. That what is explicitly two can at the same time be implicitly one. If you forget that, very funny things happen.
Fleet of them. Look on the ASA. My gosh. They're all going against the wind. The wind's 120 knots from the west. Look at that thing, dude.